I was also excited to talk to you, I mean, for a lot of reasons, but I saw that you were originally from Chicago, or at least Chicagoland area.
Yes, Chicago is where my family is still at. I'm from a little bit outside the city. It's like an hour outside the city, called Orland Park.
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah. I used to live in Chicago, and that's kind of where I came up as a DJ, like back in the day as well. So I have a lot of good memories connected to music in Chicago.
I did watch a little bit of the one you did with Flux Pavilion. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh, yeah,
and I was like, let's go. So, yeah.
Dude, 100%. I mean, Flux is such an interesting guy. Have you gotten to, because obviously, I mean, you guys have worked together and known each other for a long time. Have you gotten to spend a decent amount of time with him just hanging out? He's such an interesting dude.
You know, we haven't gotten to really fully hang. It's like only times we'll briefly run into each other at festivals, you know, when we're on the same, you know, billing, or it just seems like, you know, it's always hard to like get everyone in the same room sometimes. But yeah, I actually saw him recently. I played a show. We both played a show in LA with our friends Brownies and Lemonade, who throw like the craziest shows.
They're great,
you know, and have been forever. And yeah, I basically played a set right before him, and kind of like in between us, we had our little Savage moment, you know, where we got to play our collab together. And it was a long time since I had seen him, and it was a beautiful, you know, moment to share together.
It's interesting because obviously you guys in general make different sounds, but I do feel like maybe there's some parallels in terms of your evolution, because I think he got really associated with a certain sound early on, and then he kind of broke out of that and tried a few different things. And it seems like maybe now is coming back to the roots of it a little more. Not that that's exactly what you're doing, but I do feel like when you started off, you kind of got lumped into that whole future bass movement that was going on. And I don't know how much of that you wanted to be lumped in with, you know what I mean?
True. I mean, I definitely, you know, nowadays, you know, looking back in hindsight, I always loved everything. You know, I do love like so many genres, and really do find myself not getting bored, but just really not wanting to make the same thing twice.
Yeah.
You know? But at that stage in my life, you know, future bass was like just the most crazy thing ever to me, you know, like, and it was so fun to make. And I do still find myself, you know, it's always like there for me, you know, like you're saying, how it's almost kind of like you're going back. Like I do find myself going back a little bit, you know, with certain songs and certain just feelings, you know, you want to just feel that again, you know?
Yeah. I mean, so part of what we're talking about today, obviously, is the Life of a Wallflower Part 2, Volume 2. Yeah, it's great, man. And there's one track, I think probably my favorite track on there that I think connects to what we're talking about is the track Do You Remember? And
yes,
that track...
That was actually what I was just thinking of when I was saying that, with the return to kind of the future bass, like, you know, because, I mean, not to get into it too much, but like that song, you know, I mean, I love collaborating, right? And I did work with some friends on that one too, but a lot of times, yeah, just like certain collaborations. And I feel like that one was not really a collaboration in that way. It was really a piece of me, you know, like I really just wanted to, just have my personality on that one, you know?
Yeah. And to me, it felt like I could hear you in it with, you know, the sort of the interesting, like arpeggiated chords at the drop and all that, which kind of to me harkened back to a lot of the future bass stuff from your past. But then it's an interesting update. I kind of like what we were talking about with house music being timeless too. Like, I was thinking about this a couple days ago, where it's interesting because house music is such a like defined sandbox, right? Like it's like, it's true. There's drums, it's a groove. We all kind of know the pieces that you can put in or take out. And so it's really, I don't know, it's an interesting thing, like 30, 40 years into house music, where it's really about somebody's personality, like taking an old idea, kind of flipping it, twisting it, your perspective on it, still within those confines. This is a long-winded way to say, when I heard Do You Remember, I kind of had one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is so cool because somebody figured out a new flip. And so I love those moments of, this is just, everything I recognize, but slightly, just the angle is tilted a little bit. And I don't know, man, there was something about it where I felt like it connected back to what you did, but also was a new thing in a way I hadn't heard before, if that makes sense.
Wow, I just want to say thank you so much. I love that, and that is exactly, I guess, what I intended, like there's not always an intention, but like, yeah, I mean, that was the feeling. I loved how, and it just happened, like I don't always like necessarily sit down and think, what to do. Sometimes it just comes, but yeah, it was fun to be in the temple of house music, really play with the synths in my, kind of future-y world. And then I think what really set it for me was just, really heavily gating everything and having it be really tight. And, it just brought me back to the SoundCloud days when I used to go on SoundCloud and I would, you'd just be hearing, and I still do, but like you'd be hearing all these crazy tracks that just sonically just sound crazy, and just like move in like weird ways. And yeah, I just wanted to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. The SoundCloud era, so much innovation was happening so quickly then. And I talk about this with a lot of people, but it's something that I think we're kind of missing in the modern era. And you can see different people are trying to come up with new platforms. SoundCloud obviously still exists. And I've seen some people kind of going back to it, starting to post there more. But just in terms of that community where there's all these ideas flying around, I don't know. Do you have anything like that anymore?
I know, it's really interesting. It's kind of just slowly faded away a little bit. Like I feel that. I don't know if it's our attention span. I don't know if it's just where our attention is. Like, when I think about SoundCloud though, it's like just the music.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. It's just the track. And there's maybe a little bit, you get album cover, a few things. There's still a comment section. So there's community, but like, I feel like everything else, at least nowadays, it's just so content focused where it's like you have to have everything with it, when SoundCloud was really just focused on the music.
Yeah, it's true.
And it still
man.
is. Like I'm sure there are things, but yeah, I do find it less. It is harder to find. You have to dig a little deeper.
I mean, because back in the day, would you say, am I right in saying that like your community for music when you were up and coming was mostly online? Or did you also feel like you had a bunch of people locally?
I think it started to kind of mesh together in a beautiful way where, I have to mention some of my best friends, Louis the Child, who are also from Chicago and, definitely get lumped into the future-based scene. I remember even being really inspired by them when I was super young and like, coming up, and I didn't know them actually personally. We didn't go to school together or anything, but we ended up finally like linking, but we could almost be considered friends online first, in a way. I had sent a couple tracks to them, they've been like, oh, like dope, like love that you're from Chicago, like kind of vibe, and
yeah,
finally got to end up linking up and obviously became like really, really close friends that I'm still super close with to this day. And right around the same time that they moved to LA, I was kind of moving to LA too. It was like we were a similar age, so it just was all making sense. And we were kind of able to, we did have a great little scene and bubble and like thing going on, right when we came here. And we've kind of all dispersed in our own different ways and beautiful ways to like work with, all different artists from, all different places, and it all kind of comes back. But yeah.
When you guys were all in Chicago, were you playing shows locally? Like, were you, I know you kind of really started popping off online and moved to LA fairly early on in that rise. But I mean, was there any kind of like, were you playing local shows? Were you going out before? I guess you were so young, it's hard to even.
Yeah, I know. I always credit that to like being young where I wasn't able to really go to like shows. I hadn't had that much experience like going out and seeing DJs or even that much live music, to be honest. I definitely had a few moments I can remember that were kind of funny, but
like what?
I got to go to.
What did you see early?
One of the earliest things that I got to see, which I still wasn't even like that young, but my uncle works in the merchandise world and helps with clothing and works with all these bands back in the day. And I went to Warped Tour, in Chicago. And it was kind of during a phase of Warped Tour when they were starting to like have electronic artists on it. So it was like kind of different, it was probably like, not the purest form of what it was probably, but like it was super interesting to me because I was so young and I was really into dubstep and Skrillex, and I just wanted to, hear that. And there was no way else to hear that. And I went to a show and it just completely blew my mind, you know.
Oh, that's fun, man.
Like,
do you remember? Because
I
had a Crisley did 1 year on the Warped Tour. I think Anti-Serum did another year. They were telling me, man, it sounded like a real grind to be a DJ on the Warped Tour. They were having to like literally like they carried their own gear. They'd have to like drag it and set it up on the stage and break it down themselves every day. And it was different the way the Warped Tour did it, as I'm sure you know. But for anyone who doesn't, you know, every band had like different set times every day. So it was always like sometimes you would be playing at 1 p.m. Sometimes you'd be playing at 11 p.m. and changing every day in like these baking parking lots, you know, 60-day tours where you're playing like every single day. It sounded intense, man.
It was epic. And I did kind of get to see a little bit of the behind the scenes, being with my uncle. So I was like backstage, and even he was tight with there was this DJ, Big Chocolate actually was his name.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
His manager was like tight with my uncle. And so I was like, I forget how old I was. I was like 12 or 13 years old. Like, and they were just like, yo, like go out there in the front. Like, and I like went out there with my phone and I was like bumping with the crowd, and I like had no idea what I was doing. I looked super awkward, out of place. But like looking back, that was really like the pivotal moment, at least seeing it live, where I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, this is so fun. Because I had really been into producing at that point. Like I was, just starting out and just trying. Like I was really into dance music at that point.
Was there any part of you before that was a performer in any way? Like, had you gotten up on stage to do anything?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. Not really. I would say no. My prior experience, the only two things that like came to mind was like, I did play hockey. That's not really performing, but like it's kind of a sport. Sometimes it could be performative. That was the thing back in the day.
Yeah.
Right. But that's different, but not music related. You know what's funny though? I always think back to it now. I would always think about the music in those type of situations. Like even back then, like if a song came on when I was a kid in sports, I'd be like, whoa, what is that? Like I want to, and then I just start like thinking about it and like processing it. So it's really funny. Like I was like just always thinking about music.
Oh, that's
but
so funny.
I also, I guess I had like a few like little plays maybe, or shows when I was a little kid, but that was really it. Like I wasn't much of a musician. Even I wasn't really like, I never really got into one instrument. I kind of dabbled a little bit with a little bit of everything. I started with the drums when I was kind of young, but I never got into it. I played the violin in like 4th grade and then never continued with it, but I could tell I was interested, but I didn't. It wasn't until I found the computer and electronics that I was like, whoa, I can control every instrument on this computer and do it all. Like, this is cool.
Of course. And to me, that means maybe either, I don't know if you had any like gaming background. And then there's also another type I've found that's like the people who just want to like get inside everything, like take things apart, put them back together, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. I actually totally agree with both of the things you just said. And it's kind of funny. Like, so my parents are pretty young. I'm like, they had me when they were 20. So my dad was playing video games, like actually, like when I was a kid. So it wasn't that weird. Like, I feel like video games were kind of around, and it was, like, so I definitely like was definitely into a lot of video games. There was a lot of sports video games, but like definitely got into like GTA and, everything in the modern day. But yeah, so I think there was a little bit of that went into it, where I kind of did look at producing somewhat like a video game at points, where it is just like, it's like, it's colorful. It looks cool. You're like putting sounds in.
Yeah, 100%.
Still is.
Oh, dude, it still is. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, like solving the puzzle, I think, is the thing for a lot of people. Yeah, it's
always. I know, always trying to solve the puzzle.
Man, having you at 20 is crazy too. Can you imagine? Because you're what, 25, 26, something like that?
Just turned 25. Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday.
So if I had a 5-year-old kid
that's
now,
what I'm saying, man.
That would be crazy. Like it's hard to fathom. Like I was just talking about that with my dad the other day, and it's just like, that's crazy.
It's not, and especially like if you
epic.
Think about
like
what was going on in your life 5 years ago, just on tour, putting out a ton of music.
Oh, just living on a tour bus for sure, and just in studios like every day.
Yeah, imagine having a kid at that point in your life, man. It's so crazy.
I know now it's like maybe a little more believable because I have like a little bit more, I'm a little more locked down. I have like a place and, some comfort. But yeah, at 20 would be insane. I couldn't even imagine.
Nuts, man. Yeah. What's your parents' background? Like, is there any music background for them?
Yeah. So honestly, they would claim not really, like, at all. Like, my mom doesn't really have any instrument background, but she loves alternative music and like indie and like rock. So I feel like I kind of grew up listening to a lot of that, like modern kind of cooler stuff. Like she does have good taste. Like, I love my mom's taste, and same with my dad. Like, he grew up, or not grew up, but I grew up with him listening to a lot of hip hop, you know? So it's kind of like that kind of dual world where they both kind of like dance music when it meets in the middle, So that's where I see my kind of like sound, where it's like a little bit of hip hop, a little bit of alternative, mixed with my love of just like dance music. And, and that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But yeah, my dad's brother was the uncle who brought me to Warped Tour. And my uncle's actually like a really good drummer. He's insane. He was in a band, like, when he was younger. So I think my dad had dabbled with the drums and that kind of thing when he was younger. So there is, and I do kind of credit myself as a drummer. I like other songs I work on with other people. I do see myself doing a lot of drum work all the time. And it's like my favorite. So I might just be a drummer.
Hey, that's fun, man. That's something you can explore later on in life, maybe. And it's got to be fun for your folks too. I'm thinking about like if you're a young parent and then your kid does something in music, becomes a DJ, that sort of thing. Were they able to connect to that a little more? Because sometimes you'll hear the story of, somebody tells their parents, I want to be a DJ, and their parents just kind of have no frame of reference for what they're even talking about.
Yeah, I think they had a little bit of reference, right? Maybe more than just like someone who's just a little bit older. But I think, with me being like, when I was younger, I was just so into like whatever I was into, I was just into it. Like I remember being really into hockey, like I was saying. So I wanted to go to the NHL and be a professional hockey player. Or, I remember really being into skateboarding. And so I was like, I'm going to go be like a pro skateboarder. And I just always like set my mind to whatever, or like a snowboard or whatever. And so when it came time to like do music and like, I was like, I want to be a DJ. It was kind of just like another one of the things that they thought I was just like trying to do.
Right.
But I obviously took it like way farther and never really stopped doing it. And, I do remember like always showing them songs, along the way and kind of being like, oh, like, what do you think of this? Or like, what do you think of that? Like not having that many people to really show my music or get out to the world, And so I remember like, even this is kind of a funny moment, not to diss my parents at all, because this isn't a diss to them. But I remember like one of my first songs that I credit that I like found success with, XE3 on SoundCloud, which kind of made my managers find me. Skrillex had discovered that and put that in a playlist. A lot of people were like finding that. I remember showing that to them, and I kind of like had this feeling like kind of inside me where I was like, this one just feels like kind of crazy, a little different, like kind of special. Like, I don't know. And I didn't say that or anything, but I was just like, check out this like new thing. And like, they were like, oh, this is cool. But I could tell like they didn't understand it almost. And I kind of like had that moment where I was like, oh, like interesting. And then I was just like, I don't know if it's just that thing where you almost like have to make something that your parents don't like not necessarily don't like, because they didn't not like it, but like to push something forward and like, yeah, be a little like, it just taught me a little bit about that. And then like seeing how
so
it all
funny. I love the idea that
funny,
like that's the real secret to success, is you have to make something your parents don't like.
I know, which is totally wrong in my book, because my parents love all my music, but I guess that's the thing. Maybe they just have to, but maybe they don't love it all. That's the thing. I can tell when they don't, but like,
but there's a lesson in that,
but
too,
they're real
man.
about it. And I actually love that too. They don't hurt my feelings or anything.
Right. But I think there's a lesson in that too, because anyone who makes music knows that feeling of showing something to a friend or a peer that you're really excited about and not getting that exact reaction you want. And them just being like, oh, cool, when it's like something you were really hoping they'd be excited about. And that's one of those weird moments where I think any artist has to kind of check in with yourself to be, because sometimes you just have to be like, it doesn't matter if anyone else
exactly.
gets it or
and
not.
That's almost the lesson in it that I was going to say is it's no diss to my parents, but that song wasn't really for them. That was for me and the kids that were my age at that time. And like just understood it. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Just always know who your audience too, or not know. Yeah. Just know who you're playing it for. Like it's okay. Like not everyone's going to, but like, you know, I think that the chance that if you really like something, there's a chance someone else is going to like it. Maybe, you know?
Yeah. Well, it makes me wonder, man, for you, we were talking about, you know, the future based scene at the start and all of that. Do you, because it's hard for me to even say who I would say are like your peers or like exactly what scene you're in right now. Is that at this point in your career, you've done plenty already. Is it something you even think about anymore of like, where does this fit in? Who is this audience? Or at this point, are you able to kind of just be like, this is what I like, so I make what I like?
That's a good question. I think I kind of think about both sometimes. But I've ultimately felt better when I do the second thing you said, where I just feel like I want to just do something for me and just do something that I, you know, really want to do, and not because, you know, something, you know, because I just feel like that. Yeah. Then you're like doing it for a different reason, you know, at that point, or you're doing it for someone else. And yeah, I think you could still do that. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I have found more enjoyment in just trying to really just make the things that I want to.
Well, with Life,
which is easy to say when you just, when you want to just go like, you know, crazy. But yeah, I do feel like blessed that I get to, you know, kind of explore. And I do sometimes try to bring it back to a little bit of a cohesion, but like, I think every time I think about that, I'm like, that's so limiting and not fun. Like, why can't it just, do everything? Of course.
And I mean, if you get too far off track, I mean, the people who listen to your music will let you know, it's like, if somebody really loses the plot, like you will start having some trouble, and I do think that is
partly due to my team too, and the people around me to kind of comment on what we were just talking about, like who I'm showing the music to and who, is around me and what's vibing. And sometimes because I do want to make music that other people enjoy ultimately, as well. Like I don't only make it for myself. I do have a lot of songs that I've made just for myself that will never go anywhere, but the ones I put out, I like feel it out and see like how people feel about it. Cause ultimately, I am a DJ and I do want to go out and play it and have people just feel good.
I mean, with Life of a Wallflower Volume 2, obviously it's Volume 2. So there, you're already talking about a series of bodies of work here. Is there something about these songs that connects back to the first volume or like that part of your life for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's some parallels, that I've noticed with just how I've been traveling around, a lot more in recent time and was in Europe and, was playing more shows again. And it was kind of a long time since I played some shows. So it's felt really fresh. It almost feels like not the first time, but, it's bringing me back to the feelings I had for Life of a Wallflower Volume 1. And a lot of it is kind of down to a little bit of what I was just mentioning, where it's not necessarily all cohesive. Sometimes my brain is in a very exploratory phase and wants to just, tell you about it, right. And this is kind of, the Wallflower Volume 2 being realized again, where this isn't necessarily like, it's more of like, it's more of a, it's hard to explain in a way, but it's like, I think because I work on so much other music too, like I don't just do the Whethan stuff and I don't just do this, that I sometimes end up all over the place, but that's kind of the beauty of the Wallflower project to me, is kind of taking all these pieces from everywhere and like bringing them into this one. When maybe some projects are more, they have a specific sound that I'm going for. This one kind of has a little bit of everything, hopefully for everybody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could see that kind of more of like a check-in of just like, this is what's on my mind right now kind of thing.
I mean, I guess a lot of it is kind of housey and does have like a little bit of a cohesion vibe to it in the, in the modern BPM and tempo. But yeah, there's songs like, to mention the one with Flowdan, that just kind of break all the rules and have like nothing to do with, future bass, or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting to hear you do.
But maybe it does a little bit, like there's some weird thing, like it's not future bass, but there's like, bass is a little future. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely some elements of
kidding.
like the golden era of like EDM trap stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like, because if you were going for like the most modern version of that that's happening right now, you know, it'd be like massive drops and like crazy builds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of more of just like a groove, which I think the older era of trap really was much more focused on that. And just like the way you play with that one little sample, like it's not like a picked over, overly done track. It's like there's a few elements, a good groove, and then obviously, you know, Flowdan is a legend and his voice is incredible. So to me, it's like, yeah, just keeping it simple on a track like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that one was a really fun experience, you know, that to tie into the Wallflower, I was able to go to London and had a beautiful trip and worked on a bunch of music out there, but was able to get in with Flowdan one of the days. And we ended up making a couple things, but Stealth Bomber was the one that seemed to just sound the craziest, you know, at the time. And it was a beat that I played him that I was a little nervous to play him, but it was one of those where I knew it was crazy and I knew that not everyone could get on it and pull it off. And, you know, I definitely just wanted to play something to just spark his ears and give him something different, you know, than maybe what he's used to working on. And, you know, he was really good to work with. And yeah, that came together really, really amazing. And he was really great talking back and forth. Finishing the track was like an amazing process with just getting everything right. And yeah, he's a pro, I'm so excited for everybody to hear that one.
Dude,
yeah.
He's a pro. And I mean, he's having such a moment right now too. So we were talking about Life of Wallflower Volume 2. Like I don't usually ask people about titles or the meaning behind it because I think that can be kind of arbitrary. But I was interested for you, like using the word wallflower is really interesting. And I kind of wanted to ask you what is your definition of a wallflower? Because it feels like you're saying like, I'm a wallflower and this is, you know, and this is my life. But I think that's interesting because to me, wallflower kind of there's like a certain wistfulness to it where it's like you're at the party, but you don't feel like a part of the party.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly kind of what the original, you know, kind of feeling was, where I was like almost kind of feeling like the DJ at the party. You know, I was always at these places, but like, yeah, just feeling like not alien or isolated, but yeah, kind of like the wallflower thing and just feeling like just in my own world, you know?
Was that like a lonely thing of like, this is, you know, like I don't fit
think
in
it was
here?
A lonely thing. I think the other side of it too, which this is a funny kind of, this is a bad example maybe, but like I also just liked the word. I think with the W and Whethan and wallflower, and I was just really into flowers. I was on I have like a flower tattoo. Right. There's just all these things where it kind of also just linked up.
No, see, that's not a bad answer at all, though. That's not bad at all. That's exactly what I'm saying. It's like sometimes it can just be arbitrary.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Yeah. And that's part of art too, man. Like sometimes I love that kind of thing because either a song can be, you know, this super complex, like poetic retelling of an event that connects with people emotionally, or it can be like, oh no, this is like fun to say and it sounds cool, you know, and either one can have literally like the equal amount of value. To me, that's something really fun in art.
Me too. I love that. Yeah. And I love both sides. You know, I love when something can be really almost like dumb and stupid, but you love it. And then I also love when it can just be so insane and emotional and deep that you didn't even know you could go there.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, the wallflower. I do like the way it looks. I debated that this one would just be called Wallflower Volume 2 instead of Life Of.
Right.
But figured I would just keep it.
Yeah, you know, keep the brand on point. Might as well. I mean, it's interesting, man. Did you? I don't know if you have a memory of this because I'm sure it was sort of a whirlwind while it was happening. But like, did you notice early on when you were first really starting to get out there, could you feel people sort of starting to want to categorize you, to put a brand on you, to like box in what you were doing? Because I think it's interesting when you get some success that young. I would imagine you're not thinking in those terms at the start, but then quickly you kind of have to adjust once the success comes in.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I think at the beginning, like, yeah, obviously you're just making, you know, what you feel. And then, because that's the thing, right? Like, now that I'm thinking back, like, I was making a bunch of random tracks in many different genres before, you know, like the one I was talking about, the XE3 more future based style took off. I had been making house music and trap music and started with a lot of heavier dubstep, but none of it was really connecting, you know. And then once I hit that, then I found, you know, that connected. And so then, you know, you would think, just be like, oh, just do like more of that, you know. But I did find myself just being young, and I did take a lot longer with tracks. I wasn't as quick as I am now at just getting an idea down, and I would really just sit with them and work on them and kind of just work on all these remixes, right? And just drop all these things. And there was kind of a cohesion, I guess, without even trying. But I think once I like started to put out original music, you know, and kind of build the larger team behind me and, you know, work with labels and different managers and things, like there is almost a not a box, but it's like you like almost like need to be categorized, you know what I mean? So that you can be sold almost. Like that sounds bad, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
of
just
course. No, that's real.
Know what people are getting into. Yeah. And I honestly, like, I want to say maybe I struggle with that today because of just my brain and just being so all over the place, where I, you know, kind of was around that energy and always just tried to go against it, you know, where I was like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to do this. Like, one example I have was actually the song with Flux, Pavilion, Savage, which, you know, that was the first single that I worked with Atlantic Records with. And, you know, we put out that single. It did really well. You know, it kind of put me on the map in a new way. And, you know, I was going around at these shows, and it's like the banger at every show, you know, it's like my favorite song is like the crowd's going crazy, like, you know, that turnt moment.
Right.
And then I remember kind of feeling like, you know, right after that, I had met Oliver Tree, you know, who's one of my best friends and favorite collaborators still to this day. And I had just kind of met him and started linking with him. So then we were making a ton of music, and I'm working on all this like more pop kind of stuff that doesn't really sound like Savage at all. You know, like it doesn't have that super club energy, you know, crazy banger drop. And so we ended up making a song, When I'm Down, and putting it out. And it's kind of like it's not an opposite, but it's like almost like a polar opposite. Like it almost doesn't sound like it could be part of the same thing. And then when I was younger, I remember feeling like a little nervous, a little scared, like, like, is this move? Like, am I going to like throw all the fans off for putting out this song because it sounds so different than what they're used to? But I just believed in the song enough. And I was like, well, it's better out there in the world than not sitting on my computer. You know what I mean? So let's put it out. And it did well. And I was just like, you know, it ended up being a thing where I found it to be better because now I can get in the room with, you know, more artists and just more different styles, you know, where, you know, it's a blessing and a curse is what I like to say.
Yeah,
it's a blessing and a curse.
Of course. I mean, Oliver
mostly
Tree,
a blessing.
Yeah. Oliver Tree, I think, is, you know, another good example of somebody who is hard to categorize, hard to pin down exactly what you would call his style or his genre. And yeah, makes kind of whatever he wants, but it all sort of sounds like him. I mean, in those early years, whether it was Oliver Tree or whether it was like the team you ended up finding, or maybe even just other people you worked with who had been in the game for a while, a Flux Pavilion, a Skrillex, whoever, did you get any kind of wisdom that stuck out to you? Anything that really helped you out early on?
Definitely. I mean, there's definitely a lot of Skrillex wisdom I tried to, you know, pick up on. I kind of credit him as, you know, the reason that got me like really into it. You know, I had really liked music a lot before, but until I found Skrillex, and it was honestly a lot of his YouTube videos and watching him play shows and tour around, that it just really, you know, glorified the lifestyle, if you will, and just made it seem like so amazing. And it is. So I was like, I want to do that, you know, and I was lucky enough to, you know, work with the same agent as him. And I've been on a tour with him through China and Japan back in 2019, and, you know, got to just soak up every little moment, you know, possible. And,
yeah,
you know, a lot of it, it just comes down to like a mindset almost, you know, and like a lifestyle where it's, you know, sometimes I can get technical. And of course, like I'm in Ableton, you know, like trying to like learn the secret plugin sauce, you know, always. But like, I think a lot of it was just like a feeling, you know, I think, just going with your gut in a way. I'm trying to think of some more advice. I mean, there's so much.
Well, I mean, the tour with Skrillex is interesting in the sense of like just getting to see how he operates on a day-to-day level. I mean, did you pick anything up just from sort of watching the way he moves through his career in that time?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's just really inspiring to be around, just period. Because, well, I guess I'll say this, because I did get the chance to pretty much vacation with him in Thailand one time after a festival that we had all played together. And that was like the first time, because I had been in the studio with him a few more times before. They're all like really brief, because he's always on go mode.
Yeah.
You know, he's always, moving a million miles an hour, working on a million things, like going crazy. And when we got to vacation in Thailand, it was like the first time that, I've seen him like kind of like shut off. There's never really a full shut off, but it's just like not being Ableton and like not work on music. And, we had the CDJ set up, so we're always DJing things, and honestly, that was a lot of advice I learned from him, was DJing, even where I remember he told me, like when I first, because he used to come from not the DJ world, that wasn't his first thing. And so he was saying when I got into it, he's like, I just got decks, put him in my room, and he's like, I just had fun. He's like, I just played around with them, like all, whatever. And he's just like, I just, just had fun with it until it just sounded fun for me. And as simple as that is, it was good advice to me. And love that. But
sometimes it's not as any more complicated than like, just play around with it and have fun. Cause I think at a high level, you get in your own head of like, oh, I have to plan out like a grand performance kind of thing.
Yeah. And I love that. And I've always kind of loved that energy and, bring that a little bit to my shows. I just saw, I wasn't at the show or anything in San Francisco, but I saw Skrillex and Flowdan played that massive show. And just from the videos I saw, it looks kind of reckless and crazy and back to back like that. Anything could happen. It's raw. And I love that. That's like always back to the, like just the real, like, I love it.
Dude. Yeah.
So
absolutely.
I love it. It's still going on. He's still like rocking it in the same way, like just rock star to this day, where you just got to go for it.
Yeah. He's still having fun, and you can tell. And that's really cool, because I think you and I both know plenty of people who have gotten to a certain level of fame, and it's not that they don't enjoy their career anymore, but it does turn into more of like a organized like presentation,
That's true. And I think finding ways to spice it up, not getting bored and just trying new things.
Well, in contrast,
but he even got me to try some new things. I was like kind of a picky eater and be like, just try it.
Oh, nice. What'd you eat?
He told me, he's like, this is so funny. Actually, he was like, just imagine that it's supposed to go down. And I was like, really? I was like, interesting. All right. It's so random, but it's so funny. But it like worked. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna, I think it was like some crazy lobster or something that I'd never had before. And I was just like, this is a little crazy. Like, it's not that I wouldn't have tried it, but I just wasn't really into it. But then I was like, oh, it's actually really good. And he just put me on to some really good food too.
That's cool.
Just life things like that where it's, just getting outside your box.
No, for sure. I mean, that's part of it too, right? It's like if you're lucky enough to have a lifestyle that allows you to go a lot of cool places and see a bunch of things not everyone gets to see. It's like, you might as well just dive in and do all of it, whether it's food or jumping off a cliff or whatever it is.
True.
Well, in contrast, it made me want to ask you, I was reading that some of your earliest gigs, kind of on a big level, was when you were touring with the Chainsmokers while you were still in high school.
Yeah.
What, just
really
like
cool
super general question, but like if you think back to that, like what were those shows like for you? Like what was going on in your head? Because you were just a kid at that point, and all of a sudden you're in arenas playing for tens of thousands of people, when I assume you're still figuring yourself out, like as a human, let alone an artist.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I was still in high school, I had a couple remixes, that were doing their thing. That's how I was able to, at least get on that tour. Like they were, fans of me in some way, I remember. But, even, looking back, that was still like one of the craziest tours I've ever seen, like in EDM history, potentially. I don't know, like they had like 20 semi trucks and like the craziest stage production. We're at like arenas I had never even, like my green room turned into like, from a like shoebox in a club to like, the whole locker room of, you know, whatever team we were playing at. It was just like, whoa, like this is a crazy shift. And, you know, I'm just opening up first to three. So I'm just getting the room warmed up. You know, people are just getting there, not fully packed out every night. But I mean, it was the most people like I'd ever played for at that time, you know, and really good crowd, you know, really fun music. I think the Chainsmokers crowd definitely like understood what I was trying to do at that time. And, you know, I think watching their show, you know, was really inspiring too. And just getting to see the biggest scale, you know, ever of like how it all works. And even just behind the scenes and seeing like how everyone, you know, like that's still like the most moving parts, you know, to like a show I've ever been a part of, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, getting to bring my parents out to that and like, you know, moments like that are just like crazy where it's huge. But I remember I wasn't really close with the guys yet. You know, I'm really close with them now and I've worked on so much music with them. I love them. But it was funny. I like wasn't really close with them yet. Like I was just kind of like the new kid in the, you know, in the arena walking around and, you know, I remember they were so inviting though. I remember like they like invited me into the room one time and like I remember Drew like asked me, he's like, what's your favorite plugin? Like it was like so like nice and sweet. And I was like, oh, like I was like Sin Plant or something like that. And he was like, come on. He's like, you don't actually use that. And I was like, he like got me so good, but I do. But I was like, I did at the time. It was like so funny.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's those little moments.
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on. I like Sin Plant. The new Sin Plant is love crazy.
Yeah, exactly. The new, as soon as you said it, I'm like, well, the new one's crazy.
Yeah, man.
You could do anything. Just put a sound in. And,
yeah, especially for just like sparking off creative ideas, you know? It's like maybe, yeah, sure. Maybe it's not maybe you don't put that in at the end, but in terms of like building up some new samples, some new libraries to work with, it's incredible.
Yeah, really interesting tones and sounds like that. Yeah, super unique. It is crazy to look at with the plant and everything, you know. Like
I kind of like that.
Cool.
I don't know. I tend to go.
I love
it.
That's what I'm saying. I look back. I'm like, that was a good answer.
Yeah, right. I think it was. That's funny. I mean, do you look back at that period of your life? I asked this to Madian too, because both you guys started off very early on. Like, do you look back and think about like, what would the alternate, like normal path of your life have been?
Oh, a little bit like now, you know, that I'm more secure and like stable where I'm like, whoa, like, you know, like I'm far now. Like, but I wonder, like, I honestly just can't even imagine. It is hard to imagine because I feel like even if it would be something creative probably, because I do just love like making things, you know, I just like feel like I have ideas in my head that I like have to get out or else like, I'm not sleeping, you know, like I'm just doing it. So I feel like, you know, it would be something like that. I mean, I, you know, was into sports a lot, but I kind of gave that up, you know, and just focused on, but who's to say that would have even worked out? You know, could be even more risky in a way. Who knows?
Man. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I was pretty good academically. I probably could have went to school and, see, I don't even know. I can't even tell you because I love it. I really do think that.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. I mean, and that's what he said too, which is like what Madian said, which I thought was pretty spot on, was he was like, look, I got the 1 in a million, like luckiest path, you know, and there's really complaining about it would be ridiculous. He's like, I couldn't imagine a way this could have worked out better for me. So I feel very lucky that way. But what I was kind of asking him, and maybe this is the more interesting question, is like, in that alternate timeline, in that other life, do you think there would be anything there that you in your current timeline have missed out on? Like just whether it's like the standard teenage milestones of, well, I don't know, going to prom and whatever. But
I was going to say, that's the one.
Oh,
going to prom is like the one. I didn't go to prom. I went to like a bunch of homecomings, but you know, I didn't go to prom. I don't necessarily look back and be like, oh my God, like I'm totally missed it. But I mean, I did miss that. That's one of those moments. But yeah, I think that's, you know, kind of to piggyback off that I think I do feel really lucky to have found at the age that I did. Like that is the truth. Like, you know, I remember even feeling that way like a couple of years, like, you know, after I had kind of already gone successful, I was like, whoa, if I was like, even just a little bit later, you know, like I think there's a potential I would have like missed this, you know, this boat or whatever, like, you know, so it's cool. Like I do feel really, really lucky.
Well, okay, so
but then again, like I was saying, I was like, I just don't know what else I would be doing.
Right.
Like, I just know I would be doing it, you know? And like, yeah, something creative, because I also just love art, you know, as well. So it'd be something, you know, in that world.
Do you do other kinds of art? Do you like draw or paint or sculpt or any of that?
I used to a lot when I was younger. I used to think I was a pretty good drawer. I haven't really a lot lately, but, you know, I've always had a lot of fun, you know, working on clothes and merchandise and stuff like that. So I feel like just designing the new clothes that have coming out is like fun. That's a little bit of the designer brain I have.
Right.
Funny enough, like even just some of the video games I play, I find myself doing very creative things where it's like another piece of my creative mind that just wants to do that. Like I remember like I went through like a Minecraft phase, like at different points where I would just want to build like a house and like build like a modern house and like almost felt like maybe I could have been an architect, you know, like I just love like, yeah, setting things up and creating things.
Yeah.
So there's that.
No,
I used to love like making videos when I was a kid, you know, I used to make videos with my little brother and like just all like types of videos, you know, like trailers for different movies and like unboxing videos and all these different things. So I feel like probably could have been a content creator in a different way, in a different life, but
didn't you have a big Vine? Didn't you have something on Vine that went crazy?
The XE3 remix, that OG remix, too, you know, which I kind of compare to TikTok, you know, nowadays, where it was kind of that quick video where you can get kind of what you want in like, you know, a short amount of time. And that was like really blowing up in high school. And I remember that was kind of the key to it. You know, if you get a song that goes crazy on there, it could change everything. I remember at one point I would scroll in there and it'd be like, it would be like sports videos of like highlights. And it was just like my song, like every other one.
Oh, wow.
With like a Kendrick Lamar mashup on it. And it was like so cool. I remember like sitting in like in school, like at my high school, like it's actually one of the only ones I remember. I just like, whoa, it's like the song's like actually just happening right now, like everywhere, you know, like this is crazy.
Yeah, that's got to be a wild feeling at that young age. I mean, it's interesting because I talk to a lot of people who have some amount of despair or like just don't enjoy the modern like era we're in of TikTok and Instagram and like reach getting squashed and everyone trying to figure out algorithms. Does it for you, like coming from that Vine era, like you were saying, you can see the reflections of it in TikTok. Is there some part of it that appeals to you? Or like, do you feel like you have maybe a better head on your shoulders to like operate in this era from kind of where you came from?
I think so. I think there's a lot of parallels. I think like it reminds me, you know, a lot of it. And you know, a lot of the things I would do in the beginning was remixing stuff. You know, I would find things that were like kind of cool. And I mean, honestly, looking back, a lot of the remixes that I did in the beginning were a lot of like stuff that wasn't really known yet. That was kind of part of my goal, was to try to, you know, always try to bring something fresh to the table. You know, sometimes I get a little stuck in not wanting to jump on trends, if you will, or like do things that everyone's doing. Like if everyone's doing it, I don't want to do it. You know, that's like how my brain works like a lot of the time, where it's like, I'll still end up falling into whatever I just feel like doing. But like, you know, there's kind of that, I don't know, it's probably not a good thing, but like there's a little bit in me where I just like don't want to, you know, I want to be too unique. But that I'll let that go sometimes. I'll just be like, if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad, and not get too into it, you know. But I love it for certain ways all the time. I get inspired. I'll like hear some crazy, you know, music. I think the music on it's crazy. I mean, obviously it's just music, but like the music that seems to like grab people's attention and like go viral is like really crazy ear candy music that is like really inspiring. And, you know, I've loved to see what's happened with music being sped up and pitched up. It's like, for me, it's almost like discovering producing, you know, when I was a kid, where I would like pull up sounds and pull up a song and then, oh, you pitch it up a couple semitons of speed. It speeds up. Well, this is crazy. This sounds cool.
Right.
You know, like, and so it's like all these versions of songs are living and people are like remixing them, all the songs. And
that's a good point. That's a good point that, yeah, in some ways, yeah, all the different versions, the sped up ones, all that, it's like letting people in on a thing that for a while was just strictly for producers. That, yeah, music is kind of this malleable thing and you can mess with it any way you want. And that is, I'd never really thought about it that way, but you're right. It's like almost it's like democratizing music a little bit, which is really cool. Yeah,
it made me think of it that way, you know, where I was like, whoa, you know, not where like, it sounds bad because I always come from like not a bad perspective, but it's kind of like a smug music, you know, kind of perspective. But it's like not my actual feeling, but it's like, you know, where it's like, oh, of course it sounds good pitched up and sped up. You know, it's like it sounds good slowed down as well. Like it's like it sounds good everywhere if you make a good audio file.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just seeing the success with, you know, my sped up song Money on the Dash was crazy because, you know, we sped it up first actually and like put out both versions and, you know, didn't necessarily let the internet decide it for us. We were just like, yo, we think this sounds cool. Like check this out. And to see that one go off, you know, not necessarily like so much crazier than the other one and think that if we didn't put that version out, you know, like what we could be, it makes you think about music that way.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh yeah, like it is kind of malleable. You could just, have different versions and they could all exist.
I like that too, because there's a certain element of taking your ego out of it, right? And being like, no, this, you know, the version I present to you is the correct version, where it's like, well, no, it really depends on who's listening to it and what context to say what's right about it, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant to be like. It's like taking the ego out of it, where you're just kind of like, yeah, it's all, you know, whatever. Which can, when you're trying to actually finish records, can be a little bit more of a process sometimes. Now I've noticed.
Yeah.
Sometimes because it's like, there's a lot more areas to work with. We can speed it up. We can pitch it up. But the core of us, you know, sometimes does come back to that just like natural human feeling, how it felt when we made it, how the feeling was, and not trying to stray away from that too much. But as we know with dance music and remixing, sometimes all it takes, and, you know, it just creates a whole new life and instantly you're like dancing and grooving.
Yeah. Is that how you got into production? Like we were talking earlier about how when you do something, you just go all the way in. When you first were figuring out that you could make music on the computer and all that, was it the kind of thing where that was just what you did every night? Like you just disappear in your room, figure out something on production for a long time?
Definitely. When I got to the computer finally, because I like to credit, I'd say that I started with the iPad. I had like my parents had like an iPad, and it was like my first taste of being like, because I didn't even have a computer yet. I was pretty young, and I was like, all right, like GarageBand. Okay, like this is how you can like make music. And I, you know, was really inspired by like Skrillex and all these people. And so I pulled up GarageBand on the iPad trying to make something like Skrillex. And I was like, well, this isn't really working out too well. You know, I just didn't know what I was doing. And so I definitely was still interested though. I would like enjoyed making beats and just discovering samples and like just the whole, that whole initial discovery process is crazy. I haven't even thought about that in a while, but just like not even know, like I didn't even know like what music was, you know, like it's hard to like imagine that, but like just like not even knowing like that there's like stems and there's these parts and they all come together. But like just seeing that, you know, was like awesome. And I'm happy that I found it so young, like I was saying, because I just kind of kept evolving. And once I got to the computer, I was just hooked. Yeah. Like, you couldn't get me away from it. I remember every day I got home from school, immediately on the computer making beats and, you know, basically all night, you know, until I just had to go to sleep and I just couldn't anymore.
Well, how have you kept it fun for yourself and kept that same kind of excitement? Because at this point you were saying like, you know, I didn't know anything and that was exciting. Now I would say probably you know too much, if anything. And so I always wonder, like, I know, because it gets stressful. Now it's your job. You're paying your mortgage or whatever it is with it. How do you keep that same fun and excitement? Like, what part of it is fun for you now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think collaboration always comes to mind, you know, right off the top, because making music with someone else, you know, is really fun and sometimes way more fun than making music by yourself. Probably every time making music with someone is more fun than making music by yourself. I think a lot of people, we all still have that kind of thing where you need to like sit with it, you know, or whatever, like get the, you know, sometimes by yourself, get the final tweaks. But I think collaboration has proven to always, you know, spark something or just, you know, anything, even just changing the way you think about something or, you know, like can go a long way. You know, obviously new plugins and new things obviously keep it fresh and interesting. You know, the current landscape of music always changing keeps it interesting too, where I love that. Yeah, I love where it's going. It ultimately brings me back to the feeling that I had when I was younger, where I was just like, yeah, this is like music, you know, like the feeling of like why I'm making it now is like the same reason, you know, where there was kind of a little brief moment when I first got in the industry and everything became really big and serious and crazy. And it's like, you know, it's almost like this, not relief, but now I don't want to sound like, oh, I'm so comfortable now and I'm chilling, but like, I feel better. I feel like I don't really have to, I'm not doing, like, it doesn't feel like a job at this point.
Yeah.
You know, like I really do feel like it really just is the lifestyle. And, you know, some days I don't feel like making music. I've gotten a lot better with age at realizing that I can just not make music today. That's okay. You know, like there was like so many less days that I didn't make music than, you know, did versus back in the day. Like it was crazy how much time I was spending in Ableton. And there's times where I would kind of get stuck and be doing the same thing a lot of time. I'm going to the same sounds, I'm doing this, doing that, and just take a little break. You know, sometimes just take a little break, you know, live a little life. I've learned that to be really good too, because then I come back to the music with so much more ideas and so many more things. So sometimes it's good to not overdo it, because I used to quite a lot. And, you know, now I have a computer full like 10 million ideas that I only like maybe 100 of them, you know, but I'm just kidding. You still got to do all that to do it. So I'm not regretting it, but yeah, just keeping it fun. Obviously, always new toys too. You know, I got a couple synths and getting a new studio, new speakers. There's always something to, just keep it fun.
Well, when you were talking about collaborating too, that's maybe a really good way to put yourself back in that place of knowing less, right? Because when you're working with somebody else, they might work a totally different way to you. Your ideas might not make sense to them, and you might have to figure out a new way to sort of put your thoughts in the DAW in a way that makes sense to other people. And I think you're right that that's sort of a really good way to keep checking yourself. Because I think it's interesting. I hadn't thought about this in a while, but you really can get, I think, too comfortable with your own process sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think for me, at least, I'll find myself going into Ableton and just either like not being able to break out of like making things the same way over and over, which doesn't always get great results, or just like sitting down and not being excited because it just feels like what I've been doing for months and it doesn't really feel new.
Yeah, to bank off the collaboration, you know, I've kind of been lucky enough too I've just coming out to LA. I feel like, you know, the first couple of years, I really did grind in the studio and put myself in every room, you know, at the beginning, for sure. I was getting in every room I could, working with every singer and writer that I could. And, you know, nowadays I can be a little bit more picky and choosy and kind of, you know, go on my own path. But in the beginning, I was just so eager to get out there and meet everybody. And it is a pretty small industry. I do feel like I've gotten to meet a lot of the greats and a lot of really amazing people. And, you know, we all are just humans doing the same thing at the end of the day, just trying to make music. So it's kind of nice to know that, but then also just have some friends who like will send me something every once in a while that, you know, might just inspire me, you know, or, you know, vice versa. And yeah, sometimes it's fun to work off little samples. I've noticed that more in my process in the modern day, to just have like, not necessarily take a record that's out, but just like take something weird. Cause I think, you know, my old process was very like have a vocal and then me just play all the synths behind it and drums. But like now it's almost like, let's like find just something weird before all that, you know, that's just like already interesting.
Yeah. There's no one right way to do it, man. And you're right. That's another good tip for anybody listening out there too, is like, it doesn't have to be some crazy throw everything out the window thing. It's just like, oh, let's start with a different part of the tune first. It can be as easy as that. And yeah, that makes total sense.
And this just made me think of like a moment where I don't want to say I fell into the trap, but I fell into this trap one time where I made this one really cool beat, and these like publishers wanted me to make a bunch of beats like that. They had all these samples and they were like, so we'll have you in and just like make a bunch of beats like that, because we love that, right? And so I like went in and I kind of like, it was kind of a bad process because I like just kind of copy and pasted a lot of the stuff. And I was trying to, because I knew that they just wanted something like that, I was trying to just make something like that like 10 times.
Right.
And then there was this one beat where I tried something different and just went to my heart and didn't do whatever I did on all the other ones. And that was the one that went crazy, and they picked it and it worked. And I was just like, every time. So that's always, that's the lesson right there, is just, it's from the feeling and the heart always.
What was it? Speaking of collaborations, just because you've worked with a lot of people, what was working with Tom Morello like? I always thought that was an interesting one.
Insane. That was insane. I mean, I remember getting sent the song. It was a rough song already, and they were looking for, Tom was doing an album where he wanted to feature some electronic artists on it, and really go for it. And I heard the song and I was like, immediately like, I want to try this, So I had tried a couple things on my own first, and then, got the chance to link with him and, meet him, and just so legendary. I kind of credit like some of the Rage Against the Machine being some of the first like craziest music that I ever heard, that I was just like, whoa. Or like even getting pumped up for like a hockey game back in the day, they used to play that. So I would always, those riffs and just knowing it was crazy. Like I even back then, like would almost like have this parallel where like it felt like almost dubstep to me. Like I know it was like guitars and so different, but like it just felt like Tom Morello was like almost like making like drops out of these like leads, and it was like
I was going to say the shit he was doing with all the different pedals, and then he was like playing riffs with like the switches on his guitar. He was doing stuff no one was doing.
And then I got the chance to work with him one time. Actually, I went to his studio and had a really fun day where I basically just pulled up. He was like, just pull up. He's like, give me a bunch of drum loops with a bunch of tempos, like a bunch of beats. And so I'll just give you a bunch of riffs. It's funny we're talking about it. I got to go back to these sessions and find them because I know there's one that I like remember. Sometimes when something's like really good, I like overthink it really hard and like can't nail it. And like, maybe now I'm finally ready to nail it. But like, that's one of those where like we spent a whole day with him and just remember like, just being like, this is crazy. Like, I just can't even believe I'm here. Like, this is so crazy. And just watching him in his zone, just go through all the pedals and try all these different tones. And then, I mean, my favorite thing that I remember he did was when he unplugged. I got one right here. He like unplugged the jack and he like started tapping it with his hand, and it's like making this crazy like dubstep type sound. I was just like, this is insane. Like a feedback loop. Yeah. Insane.
It's so cool too. I mean, just cool that he's at this point in his career still so experimental and open to working with people. I find that inspirational too, where it's like, because he could just
I mean, even the fact that he wanted to get in the room with me, I was like, this is, like that's really cool. So I was like just a kid. I feel like looking back, I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing. Like thinking back, I'm like, I don't know what I was doing. Like those drum beats are probably terrible, like,
but it's funny. In some ways, I think it's better, man. Like, if you don't know what you're doing, maybe that's even what was attractive to him about what you were doing at the time. You know what I mean?
True.
Just like he could see there was an energy there.
There is a lot of that beauty and like, because it brings it back. Because I remember like I was sending some beats to an artist yesterday, and like my manager, I was talking to my manager, and I was like, yo, like, what do you think? Like, what kind of beats should we send him type vibe? And like, he like had all these really old beats from like 2017 that I made that he like just started playing like while we were on the phone. And I was just like, what is that? Like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I've never even heard that before. Like, but I like made it, you know what I mean? And I like completely forgot. And I was almost like jealous. Like we were talking about, I was like jealous of my old brain where I was like, why did I make that decision? What is that? Like, I don't know. Like, it was really cool to hear, like, just like, when you don't know what you're doing, it's beaubeautiful.
I mean,
because you're just going based on instinct.
Of course. I mean, do you get
not technical? You're not.
Yeah. And I think it's a weird thing because you kind of have to have both. But I always wonder, like, what do you make of like creativity in general and like where this comes from and where you get these ideas? Like, do you get spiritual with it? Is it like a flow state thing? Do you have any ideas about it?
I think it is pretty spiritual because I don't have a clear answer. It's always so hard, like there's just it is funny looking back at certain months because I've organized my music a lot better now and like have it really like organized by months and years and dates. When back then I really was just making stuff, but like now it's easy and I can look back and it's interesting to see. I've noticed that certain months, some of my best songs are made. And I always wonder like why that is. And I don't know what the best month is. I haven't done the full thing. I don't really look into it like that. But like, I don't plan on it. But like, it just made me think where, the world yeah, it is a flow. There are just sometimes I think it's an energy in the world thing a lot of the times too. This is kind of spiritual, but like I've always thought that like sometimes like working at night is like when everyone's asleep, so there's like less energy like going on. So there's more like you tap into other things. Like I don't know. I am a believer in energy. I think that's a real, and yeah, I mean there's energy and like sound waves and everything. So it's like just people coming into rooms, can just change everything sometimes. So it is real and like. Yeah, sometimes you're in a really good flow, and summertime tends to bring out a really fun time to make music.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't have a real good answer for that, honestly, because I do think sometimes that it does just come from somewhere else, like where I do just like look back, like even the song with Flowdan, I look back and I'm like, how did we even make that? It's like, it really must just come from somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, of course. And you don't have to know. I don't think anyone actually knows, but it's just always, it's always really interesting, I think, to try to figure that out. Cause I don't know, man. I mean, it makes me like on that topic, and we'll kind of start wrapping it up here, but I'm curious, you said earlier, like, which I thought was a really smart and astute thing to say, is like when you were first coming up, you're like, oh, if this had happened like a couple of years one way or the other, maybe it wouldn't have happened the same way. Do you have any ideas? Is this something you think about at all in terms of like, what is it about either what you were doing then or what you were doing now? Like, what were you doing? What was it? Was it just right time, right place? Were you tapped into something that was going on? Were you just ahead of the ball a little bit? Do you have
honestly,
any clue?
I don't want to say like a mixture of all of it, but I think like a tiny bit of a mixture of all of it, because I think I like to think sometimes back then that like I remember like the future-based thing, we talk about it. Now it's this thing, we know what it is, but at the time, and this is funny, I wouldn't even call it future-based. That word didn't become acceptable in my vocabulary until like it had already been dead and gone. And,
of course,
the Chainsmokers had already made the biggest future-based thing that could ever exist, So I was like, all right, but basically to sum on that was like, I was a craving for that kind of music that wasn't there. And I think that is really important still to this day, where that was it, where I heard a couple artists that I liked doing it, but I couldn't get it. I didn't get enough of it. I was like, I want this music in the world. I was like, I wanted to make this kind of thing. Like there needs to be more of this because this is really cool. I feel like that was the energy that I felt when I was younger. And I was like, or looking back where I was like, yeah, like, there must have been, because then obviously everyone started doing it and there's so much of it now, so it doesn't hit the same. And I think you can see that with kind of every genre, and follow that kind of trend where, as soon as there's kind of a need for something new that like no one's really doing yet and people want that sound, then they'll like go and do it. But
yeah, that's such a smart way to look at it, man. It's not about, I'm a huge fan of this, so let me make exactly this thing. It's more about, what would I like more of about this thing that I like? What isn't there enough of for me? And then you follow that. And that's, yeah, man, that energy.
So it was kind of a right place, right time, where there wasn't enough of it. And I was loving the, the kind of thing. And yeah, people were able to, just get it like right at the time, but I remember to bank off of the timing thing too, is I remember it was in a period where SoundCloud, and Spotify were kind of like not transitioning, but it was like there were certain artists like I'd come from like the SoundCloud world. And even though I come from the SoundCloud world, I want to say that like, I do still think that the majority of almost everything I work on like is a song. I think like I'm a musical guy in that way where I love lyrics and songwriting, and I'm a terrible lyric writer, but like I love making songs, like not a lot of my things are fully instrumental, like if any. So it's really about the song. And I remember Spotify, it's about the songs. SoundCloud could be more about songs, but also beats.
Yeah.
And so I remember it was during that time where I remember like, I just was able to make that kind of transition, or like, while some people just, were only kind of staying on SoundCloud and not going into the pop world, if you will, or like the vocal, world, which always excited me. And I wanted to get in, with the craziest artists and most unique voices that I could, and still try to.
I mean, you were saying earlier too that, Whethan as a project is just part of what you do as a full musician. right now, are you working on a lot of stuff that isn't Whethan as well as Whethan music?
I'm kind of just getting into it again where, there's a couple collaborators that I'm always working with, like Oliver Tree is someone who I'm always working with. We even have some fun projects we're working on, like outside of our stuff too. We're just really good creative friends and love working on that. So there's always some stuff like that. But I recently was finishing up this Wallflower Volume 2 project. So a lot of my attention was, on my stuff and just mostly on like my sound. And honestly, recently, even a lot of the sessions I've been doing I already have a lot of other, not a lot, but a couple new things that I'm like really excited about that I would drop tomorrow if I could, if I wasn't about to drop this already. So I'm like already kind of, getting into the next phase of the sound, and it's really exciting. But at the same time, I've just hit up, by a few friends to, send some beats and some ideas to some A-list artists. And, a lot of times, from my experience, it's super hit or miss. There's not a lot of times I could send a beat through and it's just going to instantly, end up on someone's album. A lot of times I find myself better in the room with the people where I can really feel out the vibe and like what we want to make. And, I can like help with that. And, I can't always read minds, but that's still a fun process too. And so I love sending music out to, other artists and, doing it. But to say about that too is a lot of times I will end up in the studio, with a lot of my favorite artists that, I've worked with in the past or recently. I feel like I go in as a producer first. I feel like I go in as like not thinking about Whethan. Like sometimes I do, but like I almost feel like most of the time, if I ever do, it like doesn't even turn out anything like Whethan really. It's like I just go in trying to make the best song and honestly trying to make the best song for them. I feel like, even with Ellie Due trying to make money on the dash, like I remember feeling like I was just trying to make that for her. I was like, I just want to make you like a dance pop song or whatever we were like trying to do, and it ended up just, well, I make dance music. So could be Whethan too, so it like works out where I do have like a little bit of a name so I can put it on it, but I never go into that. I'm always like, I just want to like make something for you, or, if it just so happens to cross our worlds perfectly, then beautiful.
And I know you're going back on tour pretty soon as well. Is there, outside of that, I mean, we can get into that too, but like, is there anything else that's on your mind? Anything else we should talk about? Anything else you want to get out there?
I mean, it's been a great conversation. Honestly, I really enjoyed it. I hadn't even looked at the clock at all. I just looked out. I was like, whoa, wow, I didn't even realize.
No, dude, yeah, this is great. I'm having a blast.
I'm trying to think, what else we got? I don't know, actually. I am really excited about the tour. I'm bringing, we got the tour coming. I got a few special guests coming out to a few different shows, depending on super available. I'm checking out a few right now that could be really crazy, but also just bringing some really cool production. I worked on a new stage piece with one of my OG best friends and just tour buddies. I guess he's been on tour with me forever. Zach, and we worked on this. I don't want to say too much about it yet, actually, because It actually is. I want it to be a little bit of a surprise, actually. Like I'm going to debut it in a special way. But yeah, some cool production. I'm so lame for that, but I don't want to give it away yet.
No,
actually,
dude, it's fine. That's just part of the game.
I'll do a little post for it.
Have you done, like previous tours, have you done a lot of stage production stuff?
It's crazy. Like in the beginning, a lot was put on my touring. I was touring a lot in the beginning. And, from the jump, we tried to jump in and go full hard ticket and try not to do as many clubs because I was so young. I couldn't even go to clubs like when I first was really getting into it. So we were doing more theaters and, pulling up and where we do have to bring our own lights and production and certain things. So I would run around with a few packages and, see what would work. But then I remember getting into some really cool production, for one of my tours. I remember it was kind of like the fundamental, almost like the baby version of kind of what we see now with 3D with like, how you see like the visuals like all over like thing. We used like a small scale version of that in a room and like had like a projector on the stage. And that was really cool. I saw a couple of videos like that I like just on my phone from back then. And I was like, whoa, like that is different. Like honestly, still like, I don't think I've ever seen anything like, I think Flying Lotus actually did something very similar. I'd never seen it live, but I remember someone told me that, or I saw that and I was like,
projection
whoa,
map
that is
stuff
crazy.
Looks incredible, man. People can do wild stuff with that.
And I can imagine now it's probably crazier too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, now you're seeing it. Yeah, it's insane. It's like so high scale.
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, I'm just trying to think. I like, not that I'm bringing like a crazy big production, because, something I actually, another Skrillex kind of thing, but it's more just a preference, I guess, is he loves that intimate energy when people are around and it's a party and everyone's super close. And I kind of do too. That actually, this ties back to the Wallflower thing, because I think some of those early shows and big festivals, it is kind of alienating. It's like this weird thing where you are up there and you're just looking at this giant crowd. It's so massive. You're not looking at faces. You're not looking at eyes. So you almost are by yourself up there. And it feels that way. Not when you're in a club setting, though. In a club setting, you feel like you feel the energy, and you still feel the energy at a festival. Like, I've played so many amazing festivals. I'm not even hating on it, but I'm just saying there's been times where there could be a disconnect. Maybe I'm playing some garbage. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But like,
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
There is a little bit of that. Yeah. So it comes back to that.
Yeah.
But his advice was just...
Whose advice were you saying?
I was saying, Scosi said, oh yeah, just talking about just bringing it down to, like I remember, just feeling like, we see a lot of festivals and things with all the craziest production in the world, but he says like, it's still, amazing when you're just right there and it's intimate, and there isn't that many, like, I don't even think he uses visuals in any of his shows anymore. It's just only lights, so it's like stuff like that. Like, it's cool. Like, I just love the way that, everyone, there's no wrong or right, and it's just putting a show together is fun, because you can kind of, what do we want to do? Oh, we want to do lights or like visuals, or this new thing that I'm working on that I can't say yet. But yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
Keeping it interesting.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. That's what it's all about for them and for you, right? That's you have to be just as excited. And I mean, that's it. Maybe this is the last thing I'll say before we go, but like hearing you talk about that initial launch of your career where like it got really big, really fast and like really serious, really fast. And you mentioned there was like a moment in there where maybe it got a little overwhelming, or maybe it got too much, or just not as fun, whatever that is. I would have to imagine now, being a little older, like having an established career and being able to come back to it and be like, okay, which parts of that explosion did I really like? Which parts can I really dig into? That's got to be a nice moment for where you're at right now.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to explain it, actually, because that is kind of the blessing of starting young, where I almost feel like, I feel like it's the COVID curse in a way, where I feel like that kind of, because there's such a crazy trajectory, and then everyone's kind of whole vibe got put on hold during COVID, so it kind of reset everyone a little bit, and kind of everyone's moving at their own pace. I'm kind of moving at my pace again with new modern music to show people in the modern landscape, and it is like that, where I do get to look back and have had so much industry experience and can kind of just move a certain way and not, and just like, just trying to get back to what I've kind of been saying this time, where it's like, just for me, like I remember feeling like when I was younger, like, oh, this is a job and I'm signed to a label and all these people's like, pay is like revolving around me. But like, I never really had anybody stressing me out about that. I love my team and I've been with them since the beginning, and like, I love everyone. And, that's a blessing too. Like, just being able to stay level headed through it all and not, go down the wrong paths or anything is like super, crucial too. But it's fun now, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just enjoying music and getting to enjoy it. And I think I do get bored of making the same thing. So I'm always evolving. It's hard. I can imagine it'd be hard to be a fan of me, like, because you listen to one thing and you probably want to like get into it and listen to another thing. And then you're like, oh, but now he's doing this. Like, so I get it, but it's just fun. Like, I'd rather just like freak people out with music than make you just know what you're going to listen to. Yeah. I like the unknown feeling of pressing play and being like, what are we about to get into?
Dude, I think that's a great way to kind of wrap it up, because that's just universal, man. And I think it's cool that you've sort of found your way back to that, because in the end, I think that's why anyone likes what you do anyway. It's not because you make one sound exclusively. It's because they like the way your brain works,
Wow. Well, amazing.
Yeah, dude, this was great, man. Thanks so much. I really had a blast chatting with you, man. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, no, for real. I don't even, the time just absolutely flew by. I've been enjoying it. Thank you for having me.
Of course, dude. Have a great rest of your day, man.
The rest of your day as well.
All right, dude.
Peace
out, man.